Jacob had always known his place in the family. From as early as he could remember, it had been made clear to him that he was different from his brothers, David and Matt. They were the golden sons, the ones his parents were proud of, the ones who were destined for success. Jacob? He was just there. Not smart enough, not special enough, not worthy enough to be invested in. That's what his parents always made him believe. While David and Matt excelled in school, encouraged to chase their dreams, Jacob was steered in a different direction. He wasn't academic material, his father had told him when he was barely 15. You're good with your hands, son. Maybe a trade job is best for you. Jacob didn't argue. He had long since learned that there was no point in fighting for something he was never going to get. His parents had resources, plenty of them, but they were reserved for David and Matt. Tuition, sports camps, test prep courses, college fees. His brothers never had to worry about a thing. Their paths were paved with opportunity, fully funded and carefully guided. Jacob, on the other hand, was told he needed to pull his weight. At 14, while his brothers were enjoying their summer at camps and vacations, he was handed a list of expenses he was now responsible for. You live here, don't you? His mother had said, matter-of-factly. You eat the food we buy, use the electricity we pay for. It's time you start contributing. So he got his first job at a gas station. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid something. Not that he got to keep any of it. $200 a month. That was his required contribution to the household. He barely had enough left for himself, but it didn't matter. His parents had decided this was his role. Meanwhile, David and Matt thrived. They had brand new clothes, the latest phones, cars waiting for them when they turned 16. Jacob had to borrow his dad's old truck when he was allowed to drive it, and paid for gas himself. He had no resentment then. At least, that's what he told himself. It was just the way things were. Then came the moment that cemented everything in his mind. High school graduation. When David graduated from college, his parents threw a massive party. Catered food, expensive gifts, banners printed with his name. Matt's celebration was even bigger. His mother cried as she handed him the keys to his new car, a reward for his hard work. It was a grand occasion. When Jacob graduated from high school, there was no party, no gifts, no celebration. Just a grocery store cake on the counter with a single candle stuck in the middle. You weren't planning on going to college anyway, right? His father had said dismissively when Jacob hesitated at the sight of it. And that was that. Jacob didn't say anything. He just accepted it, like he always had. Instead of going to college, he went straight to work. Full-time at a mechanic shop, fixing cars all day, and then to a warehouse for night shifts. He worked hard. Not because he had a dream, but because he had responsibilities. Ones that had never belonged to David or Matt. When their mother needed a new dishwasher, Jacob was the one who paid for it. When their father's truck needed repairs, Jacob was the one who fixed it for free. When David needed help covering rent before his first promotion, it was Jacob who stepped in. And yet, despite everything he did, it was never enough. He wasn't the son they bragged about at family gatherings. He wasn't the one they took pictures of, the one they looked at with pride. He was just the one who worked. The one who was useful when they needed something. And they never let him forget it. One night, when he was 17, Jacob came home late from a shift at the gas station. His body ached, his clothes smelled like oil and gasoline, and all he wanted was to collapse in bed. But as he walked through the door, his father barely glanced at him from the couch. "You're getting lazy, Jacob," he muttered, eyes fixed on the TV screen. Jacob stood there, exhausted, blinking in disbelief. "I just worked a double shift." His father shrugged. "Matt and David are studying hard. They're going places. You're just working at a gas station." Jacob had never felt smaller in his life. Still, he didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just swallowed it down, like he always did. For years, this was his life. He worked, he paid, and he was overlooked. He never asked for anything because he knew there was nothing for him. But it didn't mean it didn't hurt. It didn't mean he didn't feel the sting every time he was pushed aside, every time he was reminded that he wasn't the son they cared about. And yet, somehow he had still believed that maybe, just maybe, things could change. That belief shattered on Christmas Eve. For months, Jacob had been saving, cutting back on his own expenses, picking up extra shifts, doing whatever he could to put together something special for his family. He wanted for once to give them something meaningful, something they couldn't dismiss. A luxury stay at a five-star hotel in Hawaii. It was the most expensive thing he had ever purchased, but he didn't care. He wanted them to see that he cared, that he wasn't just some invisible figure in their lives. On Christmas, he handed his mother the envelope with a flicker of rare pride in his chest. She opened it, read the contents. Then, without hesitation, she tossed it into the trash. "You're nothing," she said coldly. "Even your gifts are worthless." Jacob sat there, silent. His father looked away. David and Matt exchanged awkward glances, but said nothing. No one defended him, no one acknowledged what had just happened. The humiliation was overwhelming. He had spent months preparing this, and she had discarded it like garbage. He didn't argue, he didn't scream, he didn't cry. He just sat there. But something inside him shifted. Something that had been waiting for years finally snapped. He didn't know it yet, but this was the moment that everything would change. The next morning, without a word, he canceled the car loan. A week later, their car was repossessed, and for the first time in his life, Jacob realized something. He had power, and he was done letting them take advantage of it. Jacob had spent months preparing for Christmas. It wasn't just another holiday for him. It was his chance to do something meaningful for his family. For years, he had been the one they relied on, the one they called when they needed help. And even though they never showed him the appreciation he longed for, he still wanted to give them something special, something they couldn't ignore. So he saved. Every extra shift at the garage, every sleepless night at the warehouse. It all went toward this one moment. He cut back on his own expenses, refused to indulge in anything unnecessary, and poured everything he had into buying them the perfect gift. A certificate for a luxury stay at a five-star hotel in Hawaii. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the message. He wanted them to see that he cared, that he thought about them, that he was willing to go above and beyond for them. Maybe, just maybe, they would finally acknowledge him. On Christmas Eve, Jacob walked into his parents' house, holding the envelope carefully. The family was gathered around the dining table, plates filled with holiday food, laughter filling the air. His brothers, David and Matt, were already boasting about their latest accomplishments. David's big promotion, Matt's new house. Their parents listened with pride, nodding along, showering them with praise. Jacob sat quietly, waiting for his turn. He didn't expect the same enthusiasm, but he at least hoped for a moment where he wasn't invisible. When the time felt right, he took a deep breath and slid the envelope across the table toward his mother. "Merry Christmas," he said, his voice steady but hopeful. His mother barely glanced at him before picking up the envelope. She opened it, scanned the contents, and then, without hesitation, tossed it straight into the trash. "You're nothing," she said, her tone filled with the same disappointment he had known his whole life. "Even your gifts are worthless." The room fell silent. His father looked away. His brothers exchanged awkward glances, but neither of them spoke up. No one defended him. No one acknowledged what had just happened. It was as if this was normal, as if this was expected. Jacob sat there, his hands clenched into fists under the table. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, the familiar sting of humiliation crawling up his spine. But he didn't react, he didn't argue, he didn't beg for validation. He had learned a long time ago that there was no point. Instead, he just sat there. But something inside him shifted. That night, as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything. Every dollar he had given them, every time he had bailed them out, every sacrifice he had made while his brothers lived comfortably. And for what? To be dismissed like a burden? To be treated like an afterthought? No, not anymore. The next morning, before the sun had even risen, Jacob pulled out his phone and logged into his bank account. He found the auto payment for their car loan, the one he had been covering for years, without thanks, without acknowledgement. And he canceled it. A week later, their car was repossessed. It started with a single text message from his mother. "Jacob, the car is missing. Call the bank and fix this now." He almost laughed. Not our car. Not Dad's car. Just the car. As if it had simply vanished into thin air, as if it weren't a result of their own neglect, their own assumption that he would always be there to clean up their mess. He ignored the message. 10 minutes later, another one came. Are you serious? You know your father needs that car. He has doctor's appointments. He's already stressed enough as it is. Sure, like Jacob hadn't been the one driving his father to half of those appointments himself. Like he hadn't sacrificed his own time, his own sleep, to make sure things ran smoothly for them. But now that it was inconvenient, now that they actually had to face the consequences of their entitlement, suddenly it was his fault. Then came the group chat explosion. David. Dude, just fix this. It's not that big of a deal. Mom is freaking out. You really think this was necessary? Mom, you are selfish and cruel, after everything we've done for you. That one made Jacob pause. Everything they had done for him? Flashback. 14 years old. His first job at a gas station. They hadn't asked if he wanted to work. They had simply handed him a list of family contributions he would now be responsible for. $200 a month. You live here, don't you? His mother had said. Meanwhile, David and Matt played sports, went to summer camp, and took SAT prep courses, all paid for by their parents. Flashback. 17 years old. He came home late after covering someone else's shift. His father, sitting on the couch, barely glanced at him. You're getting lazy, Jacob. Flashback. Graduation day. A cheap grocery store cake. No party. No gifts. Well, you weren't planning on college anyway, right? Back to the present. Now he was the selfish one. Now he was the cruel one. Jacob put his phone down and went back to work. Unlike them, he had responsibilities he couldn't just dump on someone else. But he knew this wasn't over. That night, his father called. Jacob stared at the name flashing on his screen. His father never called him, not unless he needed something. He let it ring twice before answering. Jacob, his father said, voice tight. What is going on? Jacob wiped his hands on a rag. Not sure what you mean. Your mother is hysterical. She had to take an Uber to the grocery store today. Do you know how embarrassing that was for her? Jacob almost laughed. She could have used his old truck. Oh wait, his father had told him to sell it to help cover Matt's tuition. Don't start with that, his father snapped. Why did you stop the payments? Jacob took a slow breath. Because it wasn't my car, and because I'm done being used. Silence. Then, quieter. You know, we always expected better from you. A part of Jacob wanted to snap, to yell, to finally tell his father exactly what he thought of the way they had treated him. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled to himself and said, Yeah? Well, I expected better from you too. And then he hung up. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel guilty. He felt free. After his father's call, there was silence. No texts, no more angry demands, no fake apologies, just quiet. But Jacob knew his family too well. Their silence wasn't surrender, it was a storm gathering strength. For years, he had been the one keeping them afloat. He had covered their bills, fixed their problems, and sacrificed his own future for their comfort. As long as he stayed in his place, everything was fine. But the moment he broke free, the moment he showed them that he wasn't going to be their personal ATM anymore, that was when they panicked. And when panicked people had power, they fought back. It started with a text from Matt. Matt, you happy now? Mom's been crying for days. You're disgusting. Jacob ignored it. The next morning, another message, this time from his father. Dad, let's talk like adults. Jacob scoffed. Like adults? As if they had ever treated him like one. He put his phone down and went about his day, refusing to let their words get to him. But 3 days later, they made their next move. He was in the middle of a shift at the auto shop when his phone buzzed with a bank notification. $2,500 withdrawn from your account. Jacob froze. His stomach twisted as he opened the banking app. The charge was listed under a medical provider. His mother had used his credit card. She didn't ask. She didn't warn him. She just took it, because she knew. She knew Jacob wouldn't let them starve. She knew he wouldn't let his own mother go without health care. She knew he was the responsible one, the one who had always stepped up when no one else would. But what she didn't know was that he was done being their safety net. The next morning, Jacob canceled every automatic payment linked to his account. He blocked every access point they had. Then he called his bank and disputed the charge. Within hours, the money was back in his account, but he wasn't finished. He opened a document he had saved for years, a contract his parents had once convinced him to sign. The house they lived in? It was in his name. Years ago, when they were drowning in debt, they had refinanced under his credit, promising they'd take over the payments. They never did. Jacob had been the one making every payment, and now they thought they could steal from him. So, he signed a single piece of paper, and he put their house up for sale. For a long time he just sat there staring at the screen. This was it. The moment everything changed, there was no going back from this. Then, he clicked submit. The listing went live, and his phone didn't stop buzzing. Matt, are you insane? You can't do this. Mom, you are the most ungrateful child I have ever raised. I hope you're happy ruining this family. But Jacob didn't respond. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. For the first time in years, he felt something he never had before. Power. Flashback. How his brothers operated. The funny thing was, his parents had two other sons who made more than enough to help them. But did they? Not a chance. David and Matt both had six-figure salaries. They drove brand new cars, lived in luxury apartments, and vacationed in Europe. But when it came to helping Mom and Dad, suddenly they were broke. I have my own bills, man. Money's tight this month. Maybe Jacob can cover it. He's good with money. They knew exactly why he was good with money. Because he had no choice. He was the one who skipped meals in his 20s so he could send extra cash to his parents. He was the one who fixed their house when something broke. He was the one who put his life on hold so they wouldn't drown. And now they dared to steal from him? That was his breaking point. Present day. Jacob stared at the house listing on his laptop. Once the paperwork was processed, his parents would get the eviction notice. They'd probably call him. They'd probably scream, threaten, beg. He didn't care. For once in his life, he was putting himself first. Flashback. The first time they used him. He was 15 when his parents first took money from him. He had just gotten a part-time job at the gas station. Nothing fancy, but it was his first taste of financial independence. He remembered getting his first paycheck. It wasn't much, but to him, it was a fortune. He had plans for that money, maybe some new clothes, maybe saving up for a car, but he never got the chance. His mother was waiting for him when he got home, arms crossed. Hand it over. Jacob laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. You live here, don't you? She said. You eat the food we buy, use the electricity we pay for. It's time you contribute. His father nodded in agreement. You don't want to freeload, do you? So he handed over his first paycheck, then the second, then the third. By the time he turned 18, giving his money to his parents wasn't even a question anymore. It was an expectation. And the worst part, they never took a cent from David or Matt. Back to the present. His phone vibrated. 15 missed calls, 5 voicemails. A text from Matt. Matt, dude, you can't do this. They'll be homeless. Oh, now they cared. Where was this concern when Jacob was covering their bills? Where was this concern when he was drowning in responsibility while they lived their perfect little lives? He put his phone down and took a deep breath. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. When he listed the house for sale, he expected an immediate reaction. A barrage of calls, threats, begging. But at first, nothing. The silence stretched on. It made him uneasy. For years, his family never hesitated to blow up his phone when they needed money. If the internet went out, they called him. If Dad's truck had a flat tire, they called him. But now, nothing. He should have known. They were planning something. Flashback. The first time they played him. He was 20 when his dad sat him down at the kitchen table. A stack of bills spread out in front of him. We're struggling, Jacob, his father sighed. If we don't pay off this debt, we could lose the house. David and Matt were both in college at the time, living comfortably in dorms their parents paid for. Meanwhile, Jacob was working full-time, barely scraping by. I don't have that kind of money, he admitted. His father exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. Jacob, you're the only one who can help. And the guilt worked. It always did. Back to the present. This time, the guilt wouldn't work. This time, Jacob wasn't playing their game. He had changed the rules, and for the first time ever, they were the ones losing. Jacob knew his family wouldn't let him go that easily. The silence, the brief moment of peace, it was just the calm before the storm. And the storm arrived exactly 10 days after he listed the house for sale. His phone rang. It was his mother. Jacob almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of him. He picked up, pressing the phone to his ear. "You ungrateful little brat," she shrieked before he could even say hello. "How could you do this to us, after everything we've done for you?" Jacob put her on speaker, calmly going back to fixing a carburetor at work. "You stole from me," he reminded her flatly. "We raised you." She shot back. "We fed you. You think that was free?" Jacob wiped grease from his hands and sighed. "Mom, did you ever make David or Matt pay rent?" There was a pause, just long enough for him to know she was scrambling for an answer. "Did they ever have to cover the bills?" he pressed. Another pause. "You were always the responsible one," she finally muttered. "We knew we could count on you." "Yeah," Jacob muttered, "you could." And then he hung up. For years, his family had relied on his sense of duty, on his fear of letting them down. But that fear was gone, and he had no intention of picking it up again. But they weren't done yet. The next move came from David. He showed up at Jacob's job, fuming. "You're actually letting them get kicked out?" he demanded, storming into the garage as Jacob wiped his hands on a rag. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jacob didn't look up from the car engine. "You've got room at your place," David scoffed. "I'm not letting them move in with me. That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." Jacob finally met his brother's gaze. "You make 6 figures and can't be bothered to help, but you expect me to go broke keeping them comfortable?" David opened his mouth, then shut it. He didn't have an answer for that, so he left. That was when Jacob realized something. They had never expected him to fight back. He had always been the fallback option, the easy fix, the one who would just take whatever they threw at him and quietly keep going. And now that he wasn't playing his role, they didn't know what to do. But it didn't mean they'd stop trying. Within a week, the house was officially under contract. And then the real panic set in. Jacob could practically hear the desperation in his father's voice when the next call came. "Jacob," his father said, tone stiff, "we need to talk." Jacob leaned against his car, looking out at the setting sun. "About what?" "You put the house up for sale." His father exhaled sharply. "Are you really going through with this?" "Yeah," Jacob said simply. "I am." A long silence. Then, "Why?" Jacob let out a dry laugh. "You stole from me." His father's voice hardened. "It was for your mother's medical bills." Jacob clenched his jaw. "Then why aren't David and Matt paying for anything?" Silence. "They have their own expenses," his father finally said. "And I don't?" Jacob asked, his voice colder now. "Or do my bills not count, because I was never supposed to have a life outside of being your personal ATM?" More silence. Then his father sighed. "Jacob," he said, quieter now, "if you do this, if you sell the house, we won't have anywhere to go." Jacob waited for the guilt to hit him. The same guilt that had kept him in check for years. The weight of responsibility they had forced on him since he was a kid. But it didn't come. Because he knew the truth. They had plenty of places to go. David had a 4-bedroom house with a guest suite. Matt had a luxury condo with a spare room. But neither of them was willing to take mom and dad in. Because rich people don't share. "I guess that's your problem," Jacob said, and hung up. The next stage was desperation. His mother called again the next day, switching tactics. "Jacob," she whimpered, her voice thick with fake tears. "Sweetheart, please, let's fix this. We're family." Jacob pinched the bridge of his nose. "Mom, we love you," she continued, voice trembling. "We just—" "You love what I can do for you," he interrupted. "That's not the same thing." She inhaled sharply, dropping the act in an instant. "You owe us," she spat. "We raised you. We fed you. You think that was free?" Jacob exhaled. "Mom, for the last time, did you ever make David or Matt pay rent?" Silence. "Did they ever have to cover the bills?" he pressed. More silence. "You were always the responsible one," she finally muttered. "We knew we could count on you." "Yeah," Jacob muttered. "You could." And then he hung up. The house sold within 2 weeks. The market was hot. He even got an offer above asking price. He didn't tell them. He let them find out the hard way when the eviction notice arrived. And that was when they really lost it. This time, Matt showed up. "You're actually letting them get kicked out?" he demanded. Jacob didn't even look up from his work. "You've got room at your place." Matt scoffed. "I'm not letting them move in with me. That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." Jacob finally met his brother's gaze. "You make 6 figures and can't be bothered to help, but you expect me to go broke keeping them comfortable?" Matt opened his mouth, then shut it. He didn't have an answer for that. So he left. And that was when Jacob realized something. They had never expected him to fight back. For the first time in his life, Jacob wasn't the one losing. He was winning. And it felt good. The house was gone, sold, out of their hands. Jacob had expected another round of screaming, threats, maybe even one last desperate attempt to manipulate him. But instead, there was only silence. It wasn't relief he felt, it was finality. His parents had spent years controlling him, making him feel like he owed them something, like his life belonged to them. But now, for the first time ever, there was nothing tying him to them. He was free. A week passed, then two. Then, a text from Matt. "You happy now? Mom and Dad are miserable." Jacob read it, then put his phone down and went back to work. Another message followed the next morning. "David, you really let them get evicted?" Jacob sighed. He had expected this. He tapped out a response. They weren't evicted. They had years to take responsibility for their own lives. They chose not to. "Not my problem." No reply. The next time he heard from his parents, it wasn't through a phone call. It was through a bank notification. Jacob checked his account, his stomach twisting. Then he saw it. His parents had tried to withdraw money from an old emergency account he had once let them use. They hadn't asked. They hadn't warned him. They had just assumed. Just like they always did. Only this time, the transaction had been blocked because Jacob had already removed their access. A minute later, his phone rang. It was his mother. He let it go to voicemail. Then his father called. Then Matt. Then David. None of them got an answer. Jacob wasn't playing their game anymore. Flashback. The last family dinner before he cut ties completely. It had been Mother's Day. As expected, Matt and David made reservations at an upscale restaurant. The kind of place where a steak cost more than Jacob used to make in a day. They invited him, not because they missed him, but because they needed someone to split the check. Jacob almost declined. But then he had an idea. He showed up 10 minutes late. Not by accident, on purpose. His mother looked thrilled when she saw him, not because she was happy to see him, but because for a moment she thought he had come crawling back. "Jacob," she gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "I knew you wouldn't abandon your family forever." Jacob forced a polite smile. "Happy Mother's Day." David and Matt exchanged glances. They knew something was off. They ordered food. They talked about their jobs, their investments, the struggle of finding good help. No one asked about Jacob. Not once. Finally, the check arrived. His mother pushed it toward him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Jacob," she said sweetly, "since you've been doing so well lately, why don't you cover this one?" Jacob leaned back in his chair, studying their faces. David wouldn't make eye contact. Matt was smirking, like he was in on some inside joke. And his mother, she looked smug, like she had won, like selling the house, cutting them off, and standing up for himself had been just a phase, and now he was back where he belonged. Their wallet. Jacob smiled, reached into his pocket, pulled out his card, then laughed, loud enough that the table next to them turned to stare. His mother's smile faltered. "Jacob?" He wiped a fake tear from his eye, still grinning. "Oh man, you really thought?" He shook his head. "No, Mom, I'm not paying." Silence. David looked shocked. Matt scowled, and his mother, her face twisted with rage. "But it's Mother's Day," she snapped. Jacob picked up his napkin, dabbed his mouth, and stood. "Yeah, and I already got you a gift." "What gift?" she demanded. Jacob smiled. "Your independence." Then he walked out. Present day. He never spoke to them again. He blocked their numbers, moved to a new city, got a new job that paid more and gave him time to actually live. He took vacations, bought a car, opened a savings account, just for him. For the first time ever, his money was his. Not Matt's. Not David's. Not Mom and Dad's. And them? Last he heard, his mother had to get a part-time job to cover rent. His father sold his truck, and now drove an old beater. David and Matt still made six figures, still went on vacations. But somehow, when they had to take care of Mom and Dad, suddenly their money wasn't so available anymore. Because rich people don't share. Flashback. The lesson he learned. He was 12 the first time he understood what being family really meant. Matt had a birthday coming up, and their mother wanted to get him a new gaming console. But money was tight. She sat Jacob down in the kitchen. "Jacob," she said sweetly, "you love your brother, don't you?" He nodded. Of course he did. Then you wouldn't mind giving up your allowance this month, right? So we can afford a gift for him? Jacob hesitated. But what about my birthday? His mother laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Oh, sweetie. She ruffled his hair. Your birthday isn't as important as his. And that was the moment he realized. Some people are born to take, and some people are born to give. Unless they decide to change the rules. Final scene. 1 year later, Jacob sat in his apartment watching the sunset over the city. His phone buzzed, a new number. He hesitated. Answered Jacob. It was Matt. Jacob said nothing. Matt sighed. Mom's been asking about you. Jacob raised an eyebrow. Mom or her bank account? A long pause. Jacob chuckled. Yeah, that's what I thought. Come on, man, Matt tried again. It's been a year. Family is family. Jacob thought about that. Then he smiled. Not mine. And he hung up. For the first time in his life, he felt free.